Here we're going to tie a fly called Barr's meat whistle. First thing we're going to do is start off with a Daiichi jig hook and also a large cone. Next thing we're going to do is just take some Brassie copper wire, tie it in along the side of the shank of the hook, and we're going to do the same thing with some flat holographic diamond braid. I'm going to use red here, but you can really use whatever color you like: gold, silver, root beer, whatever you want. I like a little bit of red in my flies. And we're just going to take this diamond braid, or this holographic braid, and just build up a little bit of a tapered kind of body. And then we can capture it. And you can see I've left about a cone's space here, maybe a little bit less than a cone space in between the cone and the body. I want to keep that space there. Now the next thing to do is to tie in the tail, which we're just going to use some rust zonkered rabbit. And we're going to tie in a tail that's about twice as long as the shank of the hook. So the entire piece of rabbit will be about 3 times the shank of the hook. So I've got 1, 2, so that'll be about the length of my tail. Then I'll have my body here. And all I'm going to do is basically pierce the rabbit at the length that I want my tail. And I can pull that rabbit up to the body of the hook. And what I'm actually going to do is invert the hook. This just makes it a little easier on me. And then what I can do is just pull up some of this rabbit where I'm going to lash it down to my shank of the hook. So once I've kind of roughly got it where I want it, I'm just going to take my thread and do a loose wrap over it. And a couple more just for good measure. And I could trim out the excess here. And I'll lay down a couple more tight wraps to make sure it's nice and secure. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this wire and we're actually going to wrap it through our rabbit here. What I'm going to do is just pull the rabbit forward where I'm going to wrap my wire. Trying not to trap any of the fibers if I can avoid it. If you trap a few fibers, you can just basically draw them up with your fingers. That'll help keep them from getting trapped. This just helps keep the rabbit in place, locks it down, keeps your fly from falling apart. And once you've got a few wraps in there and you've made it to the front of the fly here, you can just lay down with some nice tight wraps. I like to spiral the wire out of there. Now we're ready for the rubber legs. I'm just going to use 2 strands of barred and speckled crazy legs. I'm going to tie this clump of 2 right in the center of the clump. That way I can tie 2 of them in on one side and then just take the other clump and tie it in on the other side. And when you trim these, you want these to reach back just a little bit more than halfway back to the tail. I just kind of roughly measure it out. Now the last step here, or next to last step, is the Marabou collar. I'm just going to take 2 clumps of Marabou here. First clump I'm going to tie in on the underside of the fly, and I want it to reach back past the bend of the hook a little bit, just by about 1/4 of an inch or so. And you can trim out that clump. Then you can reposition your fly to its upward portion, or upward facing stance here, and then the next thing we're going to do is tie in another piece of Marabou on the top side of the fly. Same length, reaching back past the bend of the hook. Make sure to get my thread up here near the body. Then you can trim out that excess. Now the last step here is to add our Flashabou. For that I'm just going to use some copper Flashabou, about 6 or so strands. I'm going to tie this Flashabou here in at the middle part of the Flashabou, just like I kind of did on the legs. I'm just going to pinch it here onto one side of the hook, do a nice loose wrap to capture it. And what I'll do is I'll pull the other hunk here. This stuff is very easy to get tangled together. It's kind of a pain to deal with. There we go. Oop. Especially with this jig hook. So I'll take this other clump and just draw it to my other side here. And then lay down a couple more wraps. I'll draw it all back very carefully here and wrap down a couple more to just make it lay back and come together. Got one difficult one here, I'll just trim them out of there. Then the last thing to do here is to push the cone back as far as you can. Take your thread and jump it right in front of the cone. Now what we're going to do is just build up a little bit of a thread head here. You can actually swap out for some thicker thread at this point if it makes things quicker for you. I'm going to skip that and just do it real quick here. Basically what we're trying to do is try to cover the hole to the cone. This will keep it from sliding forward. Lock it into place. There you go. And just before you finish, you can take your Flashabou here, and we're going to trim this Flashabou so that it's just a little bit shorter than the Marabou collar. Or about the same length, either way. Redo a few wraps here. It kind of came undone on me while I was working with that Flashabou. There we go. And then you're ready to whip finish. it slipped off there. Try this again. Try not to trap my materials here with my whip finish. And the last thing you'll want to do is you'll want to take some super glue and super glue all those thread wraps in front of the cone. Those will come undone. And that'll keep them from falling apart and coming undone. And that's all there is to the Barr's meat whistle. It's a great little bass fly. I use it for trout. Zoom out here for you. It's got a great action to it, great look to it. And you can get all the materials for this fly at intherifle.com.